Hey everyone, welcome back to the 443 Security Simplified. I'm your host, Mark the Liberty, and joining me in person in these very comfortable and fancy chairs with great lighting in our ARPA-H partner conference in Amsterdam is...
Corey No Recall Knockreiner. Because I'm old, right? No
Zero recall.
What'd you say?
On today's episode, we'll be going through Microsoft's new feature that is totally not going to spy on you and deliver all of your data to a hostile foreign government. Before that, though...
A little good news before we tell you the world is burning.
Exactly. Before that, though, we'll cover a new research initiative from the U.S. government, pumping tens of millions of dollars into trying to improve security in the healthcare space. So yeah, a bit of good news before the whole world comes crashing down.
They like to give you some cake while they're putting cameras in your house.
Yeah, and with that, let's go ahead and snoop our way in, just like Microsoft's going to do.
We just lost all. Carla's like, I just lost all my OpenID stuff. Microsoft is not going to work with betas for us anymore. Oh, shit.
So let's start with our first of two stories today, Corey. And this one was really interesting when I saw it. So 2 years ago, I don't remember if we talked about it on the podcast or not, but the U.S. White House launched what they call the Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health, or ARPA-H, which is a U.S. federal government funding facility, let's say, to help make investments that can help healthcare technology and healthcare providers. It's very similar to DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, which we have talked about several times, like
the Cybersecurity Grand Challenge, the AI one, would they fund that kind of thing?
Exactly. So there was the Cyber Grand Challenge. There's the new AI Cyber Challenge that they launched last year, which I think this year at DEF CON is the first round for it.
Yeah, it was a 2-year one, and I think this is the first year.
Yeah. So ARPA-H is similar to DARPA, and it's basically a way for the federal government to just pump a ton of money into research projects that will ultimately benefit not just the United States, but just mankind as a whole. And we'll get into one they launched last year that we didn't talk about, but just last week they announced a brand new project, which of course it's got its own acronym. They're calling it the Universal Patching and Remediation and Autonomous Defense Project, or Upgrade. They were a little...
Can we pause a little? Like, Upgrade is a nice acronym and it works with what you're going to talk about, but it sounds like they extended 6 different words just to get that acronym.
The G in patching is part of the acronym.
Yeah, the ending letter. When you do the capital case of it to show the acronym, it's funny. Look, in this one, some words have 2.
And I've heard the joke often that in federal government agencies, the only way to get a promotion is to come up with an acronym, at least in like CISA and like cybersecurity.
I think that works for Gartner too, apparently.
Yeah, clearly. So someone got a very handy promotion on this one for somehow pulling Upgrade out of that word soup. But anyways, the project itself, it comes with $50 million in funding to go towards helping, as you might guess from the name, patch medical devices. And so the program's designed around developing technologies that can help automate the security process in healthcare IT. They note that hospitals right now, they use a lot of IoT devices, and that taking them offline can obviously impact patients. Like if suddenly you can't use the CT scanner for an hour and a half while it installs Windows updates, that's an hour and a half of patients sitting there that potentially need like life-saving medicine.
Absolutely.
They also note that, patching them can disrupt patients as well. There's concerns about how do you even test a patch on I don't know how expensive these equipments are, $20 million machine or something.
Yeah, MRI machines probably cost upwards of tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah, because like in our space, we can spin up a Windows server, we can install applications on it, test to make sure the patch field
virtualize if it's not IoT.
Exactly, but you can't just like spin up a virtual CT scanner or like heart monitor or whatever to test your patches beforehand. And buying like additional ones just for the sake of testing patches is not a winning strategy for healthcare. And so this project's all around recognizing that as a challenge in healthcare IT and trying to come up with clever ways to address that concern.
I think it's going to be a $50 million challenge, though, because you were just talking about how hard it is to patch an IoT device, but these are disparate proprietary systems from separate manufacturers. Like your MRI machine might be running literally Windows NT behind the scenes, which maybe that will be easier for whatever upgrade system they design to patch. But some might be running proprietary hardened Linux OS. There's lots of different, these is firmware. It's lots of different firmware. So I'm encouraged that they're doing this, but it seems like it's going to be a huge challenge. How does an external system patch all these disparate pieces of equipment? It's something I don't even think in the IoT we have in the business space that someone solved a single unified machine that can patch a lot of different vendor hardware.
Yeah. And so there's 4 main goals for the project. The first is creating vulnerability mitigation software. So helping mitigate issues that are on them, even if you can't patch them.
And that you could do externally depending on how this system works. Like maybe it would have external network devices plugged, right in the Ethernet port in between each machine.
Second one is developing digital twins of hospital equipment to test fixes. So trying to emulate that big complex, at least from like the network's perspective. How does it work in order to test the patching? Then it's auto-detecting flaws in equipments, and then auto-developing custom defenses. And that's where it kind of has some overlap with the AI cyber challenge,
the grand
which
cyber challenge
is all about trying to automatically find and patch vulnerabilities. Now, they're taking that specifically to healthcare, which is pretty cool. And I feel like this is one industry that absolutely needs it.
Who was it? I believe it was part of our 443 podcast, but we interviewed someone in who runs healthcare? Like, it's not the Federal Drug Administration, but remember when we interviewed someone that was talking about the challenge of government trying to help patch IoT? So yeah, I'm glad they're doing this for sure.
And I think that their 4 project goals are actually like really important goals. Because you can't just say, okay, we need to be able to deploy manufacturer created patches, because sometimes like maybe the manufacturer's not there anymore, but the device is too expensive to actually replace. And so you're stuck with it. And in this case, maybe we can find ways to automatically create patches and hotfixes.
With critical infrastructure, it's very normal for hardware to have, instead of the 5-year life cycle, like a 20-year life cycle. I am putting, I obviously love this. I hope the 50 million is enough for them to figure out the challenge, but I think the challenge is great. So I'm with you on automatic non-vendor patching of binaries, but it's also dangerous. The reason there are organizations now that if there's a critical Microsoft 0 day, some people will figure out a quick external binary patch to it that will fix it. That has huge pros, but often those patches can maybe inadvertently do bad things too. And we're talking healthcare. So I think, was it 2 or 3, the goal of mimicking these systems and maybe testing on a system that's not
pretty high risk.
Yes, it's we need to solve the issue of patching something really quickly that's life supporting, but at the same time, if you don't have the vendor involvement, you don't know what will go wrong if you're kind of patching a black box system from the outside in.
And that's where I think developing the emulation technology will be so important. Also, it's easy to say, oh, just emulate that thing. The reality is it is extremely
a huge
difficult.
challenge. On the flip side, we've seen car hackers and stuff. It's pretty expensive for researchers to buy a car just to hack it. So we've seen them cobble together eBay parts and get something that works kind of like a hardware device or a car. So it's still going to be a challenging problem to emulate an MRI machine without literally having a copy of it. But I'm sure they'll find novel ways if they're spending that much money to research this.
$50 million in research money is definitely nothing to shake your head at.
Although, what is it? It's like 0.0001% of the U.S. budget. Maybe we should spend a little more on cybersecurity.
$51 million. That's the best we can do. This isn't actually the first project that ARPA-H has launched in this space, though. I missed this last year, but when researching this story, I ended up finding they ran a project and actually awarded funding in around September of last year. This one's called the DigiHeals project, and it's around addressing vulnerabilities in securing health data specifically. And so their problem statement for this one is, we keep having ransomware attacks where not only are they restricting access to important data that then slows down the whole hospital while they're trying to recover from it, they're stealing data. So we need resilience around preventing data loss while also letting the hospital continue to function when half your IT systems are offline as you're recovering from ransomware. And they've focused on a few areas. So things like ransomware investigation, cognitive health assistance, so not directly related to cyber attacks, but how can we use technology to secure and make more efficient health with like cognitive health, data organization, and electronics health record consolidation as well too. I wanted to talk about this because there was two awardees that stood out to me. The first one's interesting from just what they're trying to develop, and it was University of California, San Diego. They were awarded $10 million for their project, which they call HR3P, which is the Healthcare Ransomware Resiliency and Response Program.
More acronyms.
Exactly. It's designed to help clinician-focused ransomware response with like tools and techniques to help improve capacity and quality of care during cyber attacks. So long story short, basically, they're saying we may not be able to prevent the cyber attack, but like right now, we go to paper when a hospital is down. There's got to be some middle ground of allowing us to have a little bit better quality of care, even when some of your systems are offline. And so their $10 million is to research potential options in there.
And that would be, was it 3, that's kind of the consolidation. And I want to get your take on this, but I actually believe, and I'm already going to an analogy that may not make sense, but in the same way, I would like us to standardize in the United States on one digital voting mechanism. There's dangers and pros to that. Like, I think we do need to come to one formal standardized system for no matter what insurance provider, hospital, clinic you are. There's a storage of U.S. patient information that's controlled by the federal government in one standard. The pros of that is, right now they're storing digital information for healthcare in all kinds of different vendor products. So it's probably all stored differently depending on what hospital and what state you're in. And I think having that would at least have a copy of a backup that could be safe. The problem with that is, one, it's one target, right? If we do that, the risk is immediately, well, what if someone gets into that system? And two, our government, I would suggest this be a federal thing that has protections and it's designed to have all the privacy law. But obviously the government hasn't always been successful in even protecting themselves. But theoretically, if they had one system and spent a lot of money to secure it, I think having that kind of backup would be the best way. So it sounds like, maybe they're not going the federal route like I'm suggesting. That is the problem there. San Diego is trying to, was it San Diego?
Exactly.
Trying to solve?
Yeah. So that was their idea. The second one that stood out to me was from a company we've talked about before, but folks may not recognize the relevancy. SRI International. They were awarded $10 million for a program called Chalo, which is the cognitive health assistant that learns and organizes. And it's designed...
We need to turn this podcast into an acronym drinking game, and we need to have shots every time there's a new acronym.
I don't think my liver could handle that. Let's be real.
Not in the cybersecurity industry anyway.
So theirs is designed to provide better private communications between patients and clinicians and help provide efficiencies around cognitive health guidance. And so they note that it's tough for clinicians right now to get the right information to correctly diagnose cognitive health problems. There's concerns about telehealth and how do we protect that data as well too. So they're trying to solve all that with a little twinge of AI in there, I feel like. The reason I highlighted them, so SRI International, you may not be aware if you're listening, they're actually the ones that developed Siri and the Apple iPhone. So SRI International came from Siri. They developed that in a separate DARPA project 7 or 8 years ago and sold it to Apple. But that is the origin of Siri, and now they're trying to do Siri for healthcare, I guess.
You've seen me try to dictate Teams messages and chat to you. I'm not sure I'm ready to trust Siri with healthcare data yet.
Especially Siri for healthcare, because, Siri activates pretty commonly in our Teams meetings. Yeah. I, for one, am looking forward to Siri going, Corey, you've got Tourette's, or something like that. I joke.
ADHD, it would explain my craziness on our podcast.
Yeah. But either way, so there are multiple research programs going on right now with tens of millions of dollars of funding to try and improve digital technology and security in healthcare. And, One of our sometime last year, I think we were talking about some of the regulations coming down from CISA and like the federal government on requirements for hospitals on improving their overall security. And one of our takeaways was, it's easy enough to say, exactly, like what's the incentive? How did they do this? And this is a great example of getting that funding out there so that interesting technologies can be developed and then hopefully then sold and adopted by organizations.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm glad they're working on it, spending a little money in a good place.
Yeah. Anyways, so moving on to the next story now.
That was quick.
Yeah.
No cool, witty transition.
I'll wait and see what the actual research
You'll
manifests
recall one
into.
later, I'm sure.
Hey, there's our transition. So Microsoft just hosted a AI-based development conference last week, and it was actually a few days before their main developer conference. They call it Build. It happens in Redmond. Well, they say Redmond. I think it's technically in Seattle every year. And at this conference, though, they discussed a few new Microsoft products coming out. They had like a shiny new ARM-powered Surface PC that had like integrated circuitry for artificial intelligence baked right into it.
NDU, I think, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
We'll talk about in a second.
NPU, Neural Processing Utility chipset. But one of the things they just kind of mentioned offhand in it felt like, that gained a lot of traction, at least in cybersecurity, was this new feature that's coming in these new ARM-powered Windows Surface machines, where it's specifically an AI-powered Windows 11 feature that is coming to those, soon also coming to Intel and AMD-based ones, that can help users see what they've been doing on their laptop over time. So they call it Recall, or specifically Recall for Copilot Plus PCs, because Microsoft can't make any naming easy. And it's designed...
Find your files for Alzheimer patients, basically.
Exactly, yes. It's designed to keep track of everything you do on your computer and then allow you to like retroactively search and say, oh, I was working on something, what was it? And quickly find like exactly what it was. And it works by taking screenshots every second effectively of what you're working on in your machine, throwing that into a local AI model that then digests them and then presents you with a chat bot that you can chat with and say, hey, creepy NSA bot, what was I working on earlier? I can't remember the color of that web page. So there's more to this, but I want to stop for a quick hot take on this
when John Doe was in his bedroom at 11 p.m., what was going on his computer?
Exactly. So like some of the details, the screenshots are processed by on-device NPU, that neural processing utility. Then the AI model extracts data from that and then turns it into an index that you can interact with through a chatbot. Microsoft says that all the data is encrypted using BitLocker tied to the individual user account on there. It's not shared with any other users on the device, and it should remain local on it as well.
Until the EULA changes in 2 years, because they want to use it to train Bing's machine learning.
They say that...
Sorry, that was sarcasm. That's not what the article says. That was Corey.
So they did some damage control after this came out, and smart Alex like you and me said the exact same sarcastic comments. They do claim that, again, it's totally local on the index. It won't go to the cloud. They say they won't use any of the information to train their AI at all. They said that certain applications, like when you use Edge or any Chromium-based browser in private mode, it won't do that. Functionally, how they managed to block out that frame, I don't know. They say any content protected by DRM will not be included to make sure that the movie industry is happy, I guess.
Yeah, because we only want to invade your privacy, but the people that pay us, they should have their privacy.
Exactly. They didn't make any comment about like other web browsers in private mode and like supporting that natively. They also said that there's a group policy that you can deploy to disable it entirely in your organization. But like on the face of this sounds like a really bad idea.
Who's asking for this? Like, yeah, I just turned 50. I'm old. Yeah, I'm pop Corey, as you call me. So sometimes I have bad organization skills and I can't remember where I put a file on my computer. But I don't want AI to watch every damn thing I do so that I can search and find it. Who is asking for this? What user wants this?
I have to imagine it's that almost came off as very mean. Not even more elderly Corys, but more elderly people that maybe they do forget what they were working on, and it would be nice to say, hey, what move was I on in Minesweeper or something? I can't find a legitimate use.
I don't get it.
And the impact of this is just substantial.
It's spyware.
Because it feels effectively like spyware. And yes, it's locally maintained, but now you've got this trove of training data that malware could potentially go and steal.
Yeah.
There's concerns around so it's taking periodic screenshots. What happens if you go pull a password out of your password manager and you need to copy paste it into another program or something? Maybe it's briefly visible. Not even passwords, API keys, if you're trying to use them. Secrets on your machine are now potentially being ingested by this, parsed by it, and now it could be queryable through whatever this application is. And even with
if you have local malware, I mean, yes, you're already infected, but the local malware might be able to pull that out if it has your credential to the end. So yes, it's going to be easier for the threat actor to find all that they want to steal from you the second they get on your computer.
Yeah, and not just what you have right now. Now it's got the history of everything you've done. Hey, NSA bot, what was the credit card number that Corey just entered into that website recently?
So a couple weird connections and I'm going to say right out, I don't trust Microsoft because of the history of what's happening. Amazon, for instance, OpenAI, they've obviously trained their stuff, their chatbot 3.5 and now 4.0 from public internet data, but also a lot of private information, and they're getting sued for copyright infringement. Recently, some Amazon whistleblowers have come and gone out and said their executives are guiding them to go ahead and do copyright infringement. We're going to take books that we have digital copies of because we're Amazon. And yes, we understand that there's no precedence for this and this is copyrighted, but you're going to use that because we have to take the risk. OpenAI is doing it, and that's our precedence for doing it. So all these companies saying, no, we're never going to use this for training data. Google said, do no evil. Look at some of the things Google's doing now. I don't believe when there's something as potentially profitable and as big as a buzzword as AI is getting, why a user's not asking for this feature, yet this feature is going to have so much freaking metadata that would be perfect to train AIs for Microsoft to do more targeted advertising and make more money from their customers.
The value of the entire usage data of a personal computer for every single Windows user is insane.
Yes. And that's AI isn't, yes, they're perfecting models. There's value in getting the AI models better. The real value of AI is the massive amount of data that trains it. If you have crappy data, I don't care how good your model is, you have crappy output. So really the winners in AI are already no one's going to be able to change it. It's the people that have the data, the Googles of the world, the ISPs of the world, and now Microsoft. So it's hard not to be skeptical. It's hard not to be cynical and think, oh, they're really thinking of our safety here when we know how valuable data is right now. So it scares me. I'm going to add a story to our thing. There's been this is still in the rumor mill, but 9to5Mac and a lot of other Apple publications have started reporting that a lot of Reddit users are seeing, so obviously if you have an Android phone, an iPhone, stores pictures in the cloud as an option. They're seeing not safe for work photos, nudes, that they deleted something 7 years ago, suddenly pop up back on their phones. So when you delete stuff, at least in Apple land, it sits there as an undeletable thing for 30 days, but eventually the cloud provider behind it, they say they're wiping the data that you asked to delete it. Some bug has popped up, apparently with iOS 17, whatever.
7 years later.
Where suddenly these photos that they deleted years ago popped up. And in one case, one of the users who wiped a phone and sold a wiped phone, which at that point should be a new phone for somebody else, got one of these embarrassing, not safe for work pictures. So I know it's a weird thing to point out, but I used to trust Apple as far as, oh, don't worry, all your stuff is local. And yes, you delete something in the cloud, we're going to delete your data. We're finding over and over vendors, 3 years later, you come back to them and remember you left their cloud. Oh, they still have your data. Don't worry, I can recover you quick. I still have your data. I won't say the vendor, but we have an exact example of that.
Yes.
So you add all this stuff of data hungry, not getting rid of the data that you don't want them to have. It's hard to trust them right now.
That scares the crap out of me from just a total privacy perspective of like, and so the other impacts of this potentially are, U.S. federal government comes knocking saying, hey, we've got a, secret FISA search warrant. We need access to these recall users. Of all these users. And it's insane, like the amount of information they could potentially get out of this.
And whether you love or hate Snowden, we already know that the NSA tried to work with big, companies like Apple and Microsoft to get this. Apple seems to be one that tries not to have the data to avoid the subpoenas, but they're obviously not perfect either. So, interesting, brave new world. I think there's going to be an outcry from the tech industry. It will be interesting to see if they go back on this or not, or if they just push forward and say, we're releasing, we own, the operating system of everything. Most people, besides a few of us, use Windows, so we don't care if you don't like it.
They've certainly been doing a lot of damage control in just like the couple days after they announced this at their little conference. But I mean, yes, there's controls you can put in place to block it at a business level or even as a user, but picture the random person that walks into Best Buy and like goes and buys a laptop or whatever, one of these new shiny new ones that comes pre-enabled on it. They don't know what's going on behind the scenes and the actual privacy impact of it. Like, I think this is a great example of why we need significantly stronger privacy laws in the United States.
We still haven't got that prediction, have we? We predicted that there'd be a federal version of GDPR-ish law for the U.S.
Now, there was one introduced into the House and Senate, I think, co-sponsored by, I think, Maria Cantwell out of Washington and like a Republican out of somewhere else. Actually, Washington as well, I think. And so there's like a glimmer of hope we might get something out of there.
There's people that want it. I don't think there's a glimmer until Congress is dysfunctional. They're not going to pass anything.
That said, they went from nothing on TikTok to, we're going to ban that thing
TikTok's gone
overnight. So
we'll
see. But
cross our fingers. We want it.
I think we need something like that to act as a framework that like companies can then objectively say what is okay and what is not okay. And something like this feels like it's absolutely not okay unless you explicitly opt into it and know exactly the impact of the amount of data that they're gathering, where it's going to be stored, how to delete it, that sort of stuff. And I think I'm with you on the same boat. I like Microsoft, and I feel like they've done a lot of good work over the past few years. I do not trust them enough to have this as a feature on my laptop to protecting that data and not just 6 months from now, like you said, changing their policy. And now, we are going to train our Microsoft AI with all of this data.
I'm kind of with you. We've defended Microsoft in the past because of trustworthy computing. Back 15, 20 years ago, they were very bad at cybersecurity. But then Bill Gates, right before he left, he started trustworthy computing, and they started doing the right thing. I'm starting to feel, Mark, about 5 years ago, I hear the amount of people, the size of trustworthy computing dropped a little. Trustworthy computing used to have blocking power at each of the separate kind of GMs as far as new products and having some security controls. I feel like there's a period of time where the CEO properly said, we need to become back the leaders of OSs and search and stuff, so we need to kind of push forward with new features. And I think they're starting to leave security in the wayside for innovation. And I wish they could find a better balance.
Yeah. I'm not convinced that doesn't end up with something bad happening on the flip side. It might take a while, but, risk is ultimately realized at some point, I think. And this sounds pretty damn risky.
We'll see.
But I mean, if you are looking at picking up a shiny new Windows, whatever, Surface Pro ARM powered with the PMU or NPU or whatever, maybe make sure you've got that checkbox disabled for recall on this device.
I don't know, between what Apple and Microsoft are doing, maybe I'll go back to a Linux desktop.
Yeah, there we go. Good luck getting anything to work
pain
on
in the ass just to kind of protect my privacy.
But it feels like we're pretty close to needing something like that, unfortunately. I am interested, by the way, any of you listening, if you have any thoughts on recall, please reach out to us on Instagram now, watchguard_technologies. I feel like this is a topic that everyone's probably got a bit of feedback on, and we'd love to chat about it on a future episode. But until then, what stupid idea are they going to come up with next, do you think?
I don't even want to know. We already live in 1984.
It sure feels like it. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening. As always, if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe.
Smash that like button.
If you have any questions on today's episode or suggestions for future episode topics, you can reach out to us on Instagram. We're at watchguard_technologies. And we would love to hear what you thought about these new features coming out. But thanks again for listening, and you will hear from us next week.
Hey, Musk, can you sell X so that we can go back to using it? We don't love Instagram.
Oh, what about Neuralink Total Recall?
Oh, God. That would be horrible. You're in my mind. Watch it. That is literally in 1984 or 1894. Wow, I screwed that up. Was it 1894?
Man, Corey, someone needs
I have
a recall.
no recall. Maybe I need the Microsoft feature. What was the name of the book I was looking at 4 years ago, Microsoft?
Someone help him, please.